This brings up something that I was curious about, which is the difference between believing and knowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that there's still possibly a resonance of not believing if you need to say, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And that what I'm maybe hearing is that there's some transition that happens as they go through this process where they just know. So is there a difference between those two?
Some people do the work, and when they finish their meditation, they believe less in their future because they actually never overcame themselves. They never overcame that emotion, right? And there's a story that's connected to that emotion because emotions are residue chemically of the past. There's others who get up who believe more in their future when they finish their meditation, and that's the way it should be because they change their state. They change their state of being. So this is a great conversation because I've been really exploring this in my own journey. Belief is like pregnancy, like either you are or you're not. I mean, there's no in between. When people have a profound experience in their meditation where something switches, where they have some inward moment that somehow everything aligns, their brain, their body, everything lines up. That kind of alignment is an absolute knowingness. There is a knowingness that takes place. And I listened to so many of them in the last few months say, I know I'm going to heal. We just were in Niagara Falls. We did a big event there, and some physician, 41 years in medicine, with a big spinal cord tumor. He had the tumor removed, and they put a stent in there, and he was paralyzed for the last 10 years, and he's walking around. What he talked about more than anything else, I was right there with him in the audience. He could not stop talking about the amount of love that he was feeling. He said he had never felt that amount of love in his life. Now, I had to force him into saying, and what else? So how did that affect your body? Oh yeah, I came in a wheelchair. Now I can walk around a lot better. And I have no doubt. I know now. I know I'm going to heal. I know it. And that's like, that is what seals the belief into a complete finality. And so he's not trying to believe. he knows. He knows that he knows. And
there's no effort.
Yeah, exactly. So many times people during their meditation have an inward event that has such a profound experience for them that they realize that inward event produces a feeling of love or some connection that's transcendent of language, where the amount of love or the amount of joy or the amount of bliss or ecstasy that they feel from that moment is a really important moment of reckoning, because they realize it's not coming from anybody out there. It's not coming from their relationship. It's not coming from their wardrobe. It's not coming from their diet. It's not coming from their sports car. It's not coming from Netflix. It's not coming from social media. This is a really profound feeling that they never, ever felt before. That moment of connection somehow causes a biological upgrade in the body. And in that moment, there's a alignment to a future where they already know. And it's not like they're trying to know. It's the side effect of some inward event. And now they live their life in a state of knowing. And that's so much better than doubt, or disbelief.
Yeah. I went to your retreat at the end of 2020, and there's a lot of talk about 3D versus 5D creation. And what this sounds like to me, or what I'm asking, is when you get to that point of having that knowing or feeling something so deeply and having that coherence, resonance in the body, are you connecting now to the simultaneous timelines in the quantum field of that reality actually happening, that you could feel it? So I'm asking that, and I would get overwhelmed with the idea of parallel timelines and being able to have time collapse into everything happening simultaneously. So I just want to say that it confuses my head. I can't see it clearly. It doesn't make sense to me, but I trust in it. So is that kind of what's happening? And I really want to talk about creating in 5D, because I think that's where we're at.
Okay, so I'm going to have to unpack that a little bit. I think this is a
A lot.
great conversation,
Okay.
and for the audience, I think we just got to lay down a little foundation so we don't lose anybody, right?
Perfect.
So we live in a three-dimensional reality. Everything that we look at, an object, a person, anything that's physical or material, has height and depth and width, and we can pick things up, right? And we can say, "Well, that's an object," and I have a body. And now that I have a body and I'm aware, I'm a consciousness, then I'm local in space and time. And in this reality of three-dimensional reality, there's an infinite amount of space. Space is eternal. Space is actually accelerating right now. It's no longer expanding, it's accelerating. Okay, so we know that space is eternal. And the way we experience time in three-dimensional reality is we have to go from one point of awareness, like I'm sitting here, and if I want to go to my garden, I put my attention on another point of awareness. That's my other point of consciousness. Now, if I want to have the experience of getting to my garden or picking a piece of fruit off my tree, I have to move my body through space. And when I move from one point of awareness to the other point of awareness, that interval is called time. So everything in three-dimensional reality takes time to create. You experience separation. I'm here and you're there, and everything's separate from me. And so our senses plug us into three-dimensional reality. Think about this. If you were lost all your senses, you weren't seeing, you weren't hearing, you weren't smelling, you weren't tasting, you couldn't feel with your body, you would have no experience of three-dimensional reality. And yet you would be conscious and aware, but you would have no interaction with anything physical or material. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so then the way we get about creating our future is that we say, okay, I want to have this new house, I want to have a dog, I want to have a new relationship, I want to live in this place. And what the brain automatically does based on its experience of itself up until that point, remember the brain is a record of the past.
Right.
It's a memory bank of everything you've learned and experienced. So the brain says, okay, let me predict how this is going to happen. I got to take on a second job. Okay, I got to start saving my beans. I got to make better choices. I may actually try to figure out a way to invest better. You know, you're gonna, and your brain says, okay, I'm gonna have that life in 2 years if I get my behaviors to match my intentions and I keep making the same choices. I'm going to run into that experience. Okay, so let's think about it. The same thing occurs. There's me here, Joe Dispenza. I'm aware that I'm local in space and time. And then where's my future? Way out there. My brain is forecasting it way out in the future based on what I've done in the past or what I know about myself in the past. Okay, so now I got to go from this point to that point, and I'm separate from that experience. So I'm going to spend my entire life waiting for that experience to happen, to take away the lack or separation from having it. So the interval between the thought of what I want and the experience of having it is called time, cause and effect, right? So then, as we said earlier, when you have the experience, you get the house, you know, and you pay it off, and it takes 30 years. You know, you're too old to enjoy it. You're going to sell it anyway. You know, everything's, you know, everything's taken a lot of time and a lot of energy. And it takes a lot of time and energy to move your body through space and time, and then throw in the hormones of stress. And stress is when you can't predict something, when you have the perception something's going to get worse or you're going to lose control of something in your life. You switch on that pretty primitive system where you're going to mobilize all your energy. And it turns out that those very chemicals actually heighten the senses. And we become more of a materialist, and we narrow our focus on everything physical and material. Why? Because the alert system through adrenaline or epinephrine, norepinephrine is saying, pay attention to the danger. So if there's something rustling in the bushes and it's nighttime, you're going to freeze, you're going to narrow your focus, and you're going to look for something physical or material, right? Okay, so let's look at the human being over generations untold. I mean, just 300 years ago, 200 years ago, being a human being wasn't easy. I mean, a starvation, a disease, predator, I mean, all kinds of things is a strong reality. So we spent a lot of time living in survival, and living in survival over generations causes us to only see the material world because that's relevant. You're not going to
really wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, and so why would you look for energy or frequency or the quantum or the immaterial
Right.
when everything material is vital when you're living in survival? So
Right.
keep that survival system switched on for an extended period of time. The arousal of those hormones causes you to feel more like your body. You have more attention on your body because if T-Rex is chasing you, you better be thinking about your body. Okay. And when you're under stress and you're in survival, your attention is on the environment. Why? Because that's where the danger is. So now what's your environment made of? Objects, things, places, bodies, people, right? So it's very material. Okay. So now, right, the arousal causes us to pay more attention to the outer world and less attention to our inner world. And this rush of chemicals causes us to become very preoccupied with trying to make that feeling of survival and stress go away. So time becomes very relevant as well. So now your body is where you put your attention. Your environment is where you put your attention, and your attention is on time. Well, it turns out to change is actually to be greater than your body, to be greater than your environment, and be greater than time. So if people are spending the majority of their life with the emergency system switched on, it's not a time to create. It's not a time to learn. It's not a time to go within. It's not a time to meditate. It goes against the survival gene that says you will be prey. It's not a time to open your heart. It's not a time to commune. It's not even a time to eat.
Look at the last few years.
Yeah. So people spend the majority of their time shutting. Let me say it another way. So then when a person is living in survival and they're trying to control and predict and change everything that's going on in their life, every person that they know, every object or thing that they own, every place that they know or have lived or go to, and everything they've experienced in their past, they're going to try to predict in their future. Yeah. So now the arousal of the stress hormones causes the brain to fire out of order because every person, every object, everything has a different neurological network in the brain. Now the brain is firing incoherently. And when it's firing incoherently, we're incoherent. At the same time, you're sitting in the Zoom meeting and it's not T-Rex, it's your coworker. And you're actually producing the same chemicals as if you're being chased by T-Rex, but you're not running. You're not fighting. Right. You're not hiding. You're sitting there and those chemicals are running through the body and the heart is actually pumping really hard because it's turned on.